Imagine having macaroni and soup and having those textures for the first time. Having the creaminess and this velvetiness of dairy products. Scrambled eggs that are super, super soft. My name is Lucas In. I'm the chef of Dynasty Chinese and Junzi Kitchen, and we are making breakfast today, Hong Kong style. Hong Kong diner breakfast, also known as Cha Chaan Tengs. The cuisine near and dear to my heart. Best food that there is. We're making breakfast today, but this isn't a breakfast recipe video. This is a bit of an exploration into how fusion sometimes happens as a result of historical events. Can't make this stuff up, can't force it onto a plate. This is the way that it is. Today we're gonna make a trifecta of dishes that form Hong Kong breakfast. The first thing is macaroni and ham in soup. The second is toast with scrambled eggs. And the third is yun yang, which is half-half milk tea and coffee. Breakfast is a huge part and oftentimes available all day, but there's also all these sort of wild tomato ketchup-based dishes, spam-based dishes, Cantonese stir-fries with little sort of twists, like a stir-fried pasta. I could go on and on and on. This is probably the most emblematic set of dishes that you can get at any Cha Chaan Tengs every day of the week. We're gonna cook our macaroni according to package directions because Hong Kong people don't know how to cook pasta without package directions. I'll let that go for about 5 minutes. And then over here, we're gonna build our soup that is based off of this wonderful product called cream of chicken. Many of you may have forgotten about this, but this is so ridiculously important to my childhood and what I grew up with. There is so much flavor and stabilizer in here. You can't screw this up. Don't try to make this at home. Don't make it from scratch. If you don't have cream of chicken, don't make this recipe. So what the heck are Cha Chaan Tengs anyway, right? This restaurant stems from the British colonization of Hong Kong, which happened after the Nanking Treaty was signed in 1842. In short, over 100+ years, Hong Kong is a colony of the UK, and the residents of Hong Kong have a challenging but varying relationship with the British. One of my favorite Cha Chaan Tengs in Hong Kong is the Australia Dairy Company. Yes, they peddle some dairy, but they are also a Cha Chaan Teng. I don't believe there are any Australians involved or any Aussie thing about it, but they make one of the best macaroni soups ever. This restaurant opens at 7 in the morning. There are about 40 seats in the restaurant, but there are 20 waiters. You line up for maybe 30 minutes to an hour down the block to get into the side of this restaurant. Once you get in, by the time your butt hits a chair, they ask you 2 questions. The first question, how do you like your eggs? The second, what do you like to drink? After that, within another 30 or 45 seconds, breakfast is gonna hit the table. The first thing you're gonna see, macaroni and soup with ham. The second thing you're gonna see, your eggs prepared how you'd like it with a piece of toast on the side. And then once you're done with all of that, about 3 or 4 minutes later after you inhale all of this stuff, you're gonna get your cup of tea or milk or Ribena or Ovaltine or whatever it is. It's some of the most harsh and efficient service I've ever seen. These guys are likely guys that are in the triad at night, but during the day in the morning, they walk around with these exactly this type of dishwasher Chinese shirt that I have on. They have these ballpoint pens are taking out whatever your order is and they're stuffing them in their pockets and you can see all these pen marks in their pockets. That's the type of place I'm talking about. That's a true Cha Chaan Teng. That's my spot. That's what I grew up with. That's what I'm nostalgic for. Here we are in Brooklyn, New York, talking about a Hong Kong style diner that's named after Australia, that has very little relationship with Australia, and even more limited relationship to dairy. How do we get there? Honest answer is I don't quite know. But what I do know is that there was a little bit of an excitement during this British colonial time in Hong Kong for the European lifestyle. So a lot of these Cha Chaan Tengs were built as affordable, aspirational restaurants toward a certain type of European lifestyle. Imagine that there are Europeans in this country, in this city, and they are eating things like pasta, but without the knowledge to create pasta with fresh tomatoes, for example, right? Then we start using ketchup. Without the knowledge for how to build a white sauce or cream of chicken soup, you use a canned product like this and use ham instead of fancy ham. Many of these ingredients might have been a shortcut in the beginning, but you start serving this regularly enough to enough people that the locals will start to fall in love with the flavor profile that is a result of these sort of affordable, ready-to-go goods. And once you have nostalgia, that food ways just becomes tradition. This typically is the cream of chicken soup that's ready to go for your macaroni, but I like to reinforce it with a little bit of Shaoxing wine just to give it a little bit of complexity, and a tiny, tiny bit of sesame oil and white pepper just to give it a little bit of an edge. Overcooked macaroni noodles. I cannot emphasize how important that is. Al dente isn't really a Chinese concept, and Chinese people oftentimes prefer the noodles to be a little bit more cooked than Americans do. To keep painting a picture of these restaurants, a lot of these Hong Kong diners have Formica countertops and these sort of like plasticky chairs. All of the plateware is really, really, really heavy porcelain. If you look into the kitchen of a Cha Chaan Teng, they might have woks if they make stir-fry dishes, but the main pieces of equipment in these kitchens are flat tops, as in griddles. They have stove tops for pots for making stock and things, and they'll have broilers or salamanders. None of this equipment is part of a typical Chinese kitchen. Typical Chinese kitchens are basically woks and steamers, and that's really it. And so you can imagine that even in the design of the kitchen, many of these restaurants were set up to make Western food to begin with. I think this mac is pretty much good to go. It's a little over, which is perfect. So we're making toast. I'm just cutting off the crusts of the toast because somehow that's how people like it in Hong Kong. Today we're using milk bread, but even more interestingly, we could have done a whole episode on Hong Kong style pastries and Hong Kong style bakeries. Hong Kong people are obsessed with Western style baking techniques and have actually made a lot of the techniques their own. This milk bread is really popular in Japanese cooking now. Milk bread is one of the more recent things that have become super fashionable, also because milk gives it a little bit more of a light fluffiness and it lends itself to a nice buttery texture. So when it's toasted in butter, this is perfect. For me, when I grew up in Hong Kong, a lot of the most interesting new style dishes or new techniques in cooking came from Cha Chaan Tengs. My theory is perhaps that because Hong Kong style Western cuisine in and of itself is already an invented cuisine, it's already new, that there's something about that cuisine that allows for new ideas to be formed. Milk bread, being not necessarily a Hong Kong invention, very likely made popular in Japan, was quickly adopted into Cha Chaan Tengs, probably during my lifetime. The other thing is really thick cut slabs of toast that are huge in all parts of Asia now, dusted with sugar and that sort of thing. In Hong Kong, there's actually a specific type of Cha Chaan Teng called Bing Sat, which are called ice rooms, where you would go in the middle of the summer to cool off and have a cup of tea with your toast and your scrambled eggs, for example. Affordability is a huge part of Cha Chaan Tengs, right? In the 1920s, a meal inside of a typical Western restaurant operated by Europeans, for Europeans, would probably have costed something like 10 Hong Kong dollars. But for 10 Hong Kong dollars, regular Hong Kong laborers, regular Hong Kong people were making maybe 12, 15, 50 Hong Kong dollars a month. So they just couldn't afford to eat at regular European restaurants. And that's why affordability is so important for Cha Chaan Tengs. And that explains all these canned soups, these things that are within reach and affordable. Now we're gonna make tea. Yuen Yang, Hong Kong style black tea. The tea is brewed very, very strong for this purpose, and it's mixed with coffee. We're gonna start by boiling our water with our tea. This tea, obviously a British style tea. This is Lipton. It's very popular in chai. It's very popular in any place where the good people of Britain have colonized. It's loose leaf, and it's like really, as you can tell, super, super, super coarse. And in Hong Kong, we pride ourselves on our tea, and a typical properly made si mat lai cha, or silk stocking style milk tea, would have been made by 3 different grades and 3 different textures of black tea. I'm just gonna pop this onto the stove at the back and bring that to a boil. There are 2 types of tea at Hong Kong style diners. The first is the free tea that they put on the table for you when you sit down at the restaurant. That free tea is primarily these days for washing your dishes. It's not actually for drinking, which partially explains why it's so weak in flavor and color. That tea is made cheap, fast, on the go. It comes out of a hot water machine, which means that the water is not super boiling hot, and you just flush your small amount of tea in it. You put something down so people can look at it, wash their dishes with it, or mistakenly drink it. This tea that is made famous by Hong Kong style milk tea is actually brewed really, really, really strong. We brew our tea almost as strong as black coffee, and we cut it with a little bit of evaporated milk, which gives it a sort of nice rounded texture, and it really capitalizes on the oxidized tea. I should also point out that this cuisine isn't just exciting to me. It was super exciting to Hong Kong people because before this, breakfast in Hong Kong was probably likely dim sum, maybe some congee, maybe some rice. It's a very different eating experience too. At the Cha Chaan Teng, you would be given a fork and a spoon, and you would be served individually. It would not be family style, and you can really get to sort of minding your own business. Here's the tea. It's been brewed at high temperature. Look at how dark that is. Usually, what people say is you want to do this 3 times. So this guy is going to go inside of your second pitcher, and then you're going to pour from as high of a height as you can. You want to lower the temperature and increase the oxidation. I've run out of arm space. You'll notice that the tea will change texture. It'll get a little bit thicker and then it'll get a little bit darker as well. I mean, the entire studio can smell this now. Look, it's darker and it's darker and it's darker. 絲襪奶茶. There you go. And there you have tea as black as night. Let's finish it off. Let's scramble some eggs. My favorite part, Hong Kong style scrambled eggs. The whole name of the game in Hong Kong diner cooking is speed and efficiency. These scrambled eggs take about 10 seconds to make, and in a real life, super high volume Cha Chaan Tengs, the eggs would be scrambled in large batches and just scooped to order. A little bit of oil in here, a little bit of oil in here, a little bit of milk, stretch it out, give it a little bit extra fat content. Hong Kong people really like our eggs. In Cantonese we call it wat dan. So we really like that slippery, silky texture, and basically it's barely cooked. We're pushing deliberately. Take it off. You're done. There you go. Hong Kong style scrambled eggs. A little bit of salt on top of the toast. And then condensed milk for sweetness over the top. A little bit of mac and the chicken soup. Imagine if you were at a Cha Chaan Teng in Hong Kong. This would have landed on your table 15-20 seconds after you made your order. And the last thing is evaporated milk, then coffee and tea at the same time. Yun yang, lai do, chao dan, fo toi tong. So, this is the product of the best Hong Kong has to offer. And honestly, as somebody from Hong Kong, this is my favorite collection of food to tell the story of how the good people of Hong Kong reacted to 100 years of colonialism. It's very cool. Cheers. Cheers. God, so perfect. What am I talking about?